the first teaser trailer for Poppy Playtime Chapter 5 came out a few weeks ago, and now everybody's obviously excited for the next game in the series, which is Chapter 5. But if we think back to Chapter 4, the big cliffhanger for that game was that Huggy was actually alive the entire time, and now he's coming to try and kill us in Chapter 5. But what exactly is going to happen in Chapter 5 with Huggy, and is he actually going to succeed in killing us? Well, there's one piece of evidence that I found that I don't really see a lot of people talk about when they mention Huggy in Chapter 5, and it pretty much gives us the entire ending for Huggy's story and the prototypes. And we also got some smaller news regarding Chapter 5 recently, so I'm going to be going over that too today. But first of all, what is Huggy going to do in Chapter 5? So Poppy Playtime Chapter 1, the very first time we ever even saw Huggy, ended with a giant chase scene through the vents with us and Huggy. And eventually the chase came to a stop when we crushed Huggy with a giant box, and he fell hundreds of feet down into the Playtime Co. factory into an unknown area through the fog. Now it looked like this was the end for Huggy as a character. I mean, how can he really survive a fall like that? Until 3 whole chapters later, in Chapter 4, we finally defeat Doughy the Dough Man after him turning evil and trying to kill us. And with our new Omni hand that we acquired in Chapter 4, we finally make it to the labs of the factory, where all of the experiments happened and where all of these toys were made. And as we put a tape into an old TV like we've done so many times throughout these games, we hear Leith Pierre's voice telling us that right when we put this tape in, an alarm got set off in the factory. And then we look out the window next to us and see a familiar face, Huggy from Chapter 1, very beat up, almost looking like a zombie version of himself. And as he slowly limps closer to the door, he suddenly notices that it's us from Chapter 1, the same person who crushed him with a box and sent him hundreds of feet down into the factory. And right when he notices that it's us, the player, he starts sprinting towards the door, banging on it, trying to get in as fast as he can, with Chapter 4 ending right there. Now, I think a lot of people expected Huggy to come back at some point in the games, especially because at a certain point in Chapter 2, we saw his blood and blue hair on the wall, looking like he actually survived the fall and climbed back up. But now, what's his plan for Chapter 5? Well, that piece of evidence I was talking about earlier is actually a deleted Discord message from Zach Bellinger, aka the creator of Poppy Playtime. But anyways, here's the message, and it says, the prototype equals Palpatine, and Huggy equals Darth Vader. To be honest, Seth probably hates me for making these analogies. I always failed those parts of the tests. Seth is Zach's brother, who's the co-founder of Mob Entertainment. So Zach posted this, realized it gave way too much away, and then deleted it. But what does it even mean? Well, if you don't know, he's referencing 2 characters from Star Wars, which I'm sure you guys have all heard of, Palpatine and Darth Vader, with the prototype being like Palpatine and Huggy being like Darth Vader. But what is the relationship between Palpatine and Darth Vader? Well, it starts off with this guy named Anakin. He was originally a good guy, but he ended up turning evil, and at one point in the movies, he fell into some lava, and it looked like he died. And then Palpatine ended up finding Anakin's almost dead body, and he pretty much helped bring Anakin back to life and turned him into Darth Vader, giving him this new black armor suit, which is iconic. And he also trains Darth Vader, and Darth Vader pretty much becomes Palpatine's slave. Now, I hope you guys are starting to see the parallels with Huggy and the prototype. Remember, Huggy is the security of the factory, and we know that after the Hour of Joy happened, the prototype was pretty much in charge of the Playtime Co. factory. Anything he said goes, and he could kill or do anything he wanted pretty much. And Huggy is the prototype's good and obedient slave. But as I explain more of Darth Vader's story, we can kind of see where it's going with Huggy's story. After a big vent chase with us, the player, a giant box fell on Huggy, sending him hundreds of feet down. So I think it's most likely that the prototype found Huggy's almost dead body on the ground, and then he decided to rebuild Huggy as the version we see him as in Chapter 4. Definitely more bloodied and bruised, but he also has some bandages on him, showing that somebody did help fix Huggy. But the thing is, a lot of this isn't really new information. Like, we've known that Huggy is pretty much the prototype slave for a while now, and it was pretty obvious to everybody that played Chapter 4, or at least just watched it, that the prototype rebuilt Huggy. Because, I mean, who else in the factory really has the ability to do that? But when I was explaining the Star Wars timeline, that wasn't the end of Darth Vader's story. And now as I finish explaining Darth Vader's story, that'll help us kind of see where Huggy's story is going to go in Chapter 5. So it turns out that this whole time, Darth Vader had a son named Luke. They end up meeting after Anakin had already turned into Darth Vader, and they end up fighting for a while, and Darth Vader ends up cutting his own son's hand off, and then we get the iconic scene.
No, I am your father. No!
But this whole time, Luke still believes that there's still some good left in his father. After this, Palpatine starts to torture Luke, and if you remember, that's the exact same person that saved Darth Vader's life. And right as he's about to kill Luke, Darth Vader turns on Palpatine, killing him, sacrificing himself to save his son. So it turns out that Luke was right all along, and there was still good left in his father after all, and he redeems himself right before he dies. And that's pretty much where Darth Vader's story ends in the Star Wars timeline. And if we plug this into the Poppy Playtime timeline, we know that Huggy Wuggy has a good side to him, just like Darth Vader does. And in Chapter 5, Huggy is going to turn on the prototype and end up killing him. But if in this story, Huggy is Darth Vader and the prototype is Palpatine, who's Luke? At first, you might think that Luke is the player, but I really think that there's no way that that's possible because Huggy Wuggy clearly hates us. Like I said, Huggy was limping towards the door, but right when he recognized that it was us, the player, he started sprinting towards it and then started banging on it. And I'm pretty sure if that door wasn't locked, we would have just died right then and there. So I don't think that Luke is the player. I think that Luke is Kissy Missy. If we think back to Chapter 4, we remember that the entire time Kissy Missy was very badly beaten. We know at the end of Chapter 3 she got attacked by something, we're not quite sure what still. But after this theory, I think it was 100% the prototype that attacked Kissy Missy at the end of Chapter 3. And in Chapter 4, we saw that Kissy had burn marks on her, and from the new Chapter 5 teaser trailer, we know that the prototype can set fire. So I don't think it's crazy to say that the prototype set fire to Kissy, burning her. She was also wearing a sling. She was just very badly beaten up throughout the entirety of Chapter 4. But now, let's think of the ending of Chapter 4. Poppy placed all these bombs around the Playtime Co-Factory, getting ready to stop the prototype once and for all. But then the prototype actually turns the plan back on Poppy, blowing the bombs up right underneath us. And right as the player is about to fall, Kissy catches us, but because she's so badly beaten up from Chapter 3, her arm gets ripped off. And I think it's safe to say that Kissy has to be dead at this point. She was already badly beaten up and now she's missing an arm. There's a chance she's still alive, but I doubt it. So I think in Chapter 5, the prototype will send Huggy after the player to try and kill us. And Huggy is probably more than glad to do that considering what we did to him in Chapter 1. But then at some point in the game, Huggy's going to find out that Kissy Missy is dead, and that the prototype is responsible for her death because he's the one that set off the bombs. And even though Huggy does want to kill us because of what we did to him, he hates the prototype even more now after hearing this news. So he turns on the prototype, killing him, sacrificing himself to save us and Poppy. We do know that Huggy does have a good side to him because if we look at all the Mob Entertainment Poppy Playtime merch, this shirt that they released shows that Huggy has two sides, a good side and a bad side. And in pretty much all of the Poppy Playtime merch, we see Huggy screaming and looking evil. But in the only one where he's next to Kissy Missy, he looks happy and calmed down. It's clear that these two are in love. So when Huggy learns the news that Kissy's dead, he's going to get really mad at the prototype and then try to kill him. But now the only question is, how exactly is Huggy Wuggy going to kill the prototype? Well, I think that when Huggy was rebuilt by the prototype gave him some sort of new ability to make sure that when he sends Huggy after us in Chapter 5, he'll actually kill us for good this time. But I think that this will be the prototype's biggest mistake because this ability is going to be used against him when Huggy turns on him. But yeah, that's my theory. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree. And how do you think Huggy is going to end up killing the prototype? Maybe he'll use this new Poppy gel we saw in the Chapter 5 teaser. That is, if this is even Poppy gel. But yeah, like I said, we also have some smaller news regarding Chapter 5. Recently, this Mob Partner in Crime, which if you don't know what that is, it's a big group that Mob Entertainment made, and it contains a bunch of YouTubers and content creators where they get certain stuff early, like trailers or full games. I think it's kind of weird that they give it to some YouTubers that make Poppy Playtime videos, not all. But anyways, one of the Mob Partners in Crime made this tweet a few days ago, and it's very ambiguous and no one can really figure out what it means. It may not be for Chapter 5, and it might not even be something for the official Poppy Playtime game. It could just be something for his channel. But then again, this is one of the people in the community that knows what's coming out before everyone else does. So maybe we'll get a new Chapter 5 ARG or maybe a full Chapter 5 trailer. But yeah, that pretty much wraps up everything I was going to talk about in this video, and I really hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you want more theory videos like this about Chapter 5 or just other Poppy Playtime games that are coming up. Like that new Poppy Play Park one, which I think exists. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Goodbye.